I'm walking along the street, and this guy comes up to me, and he says, I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Do you? I said, no. I have a personal relationship with Megan Fox. Do you? Next on the Atheist Viewpoint. Hi, and welcome to another edition of the American Atheist-sponsored Atheist Viewpoint. I'm your co-host, Ron Barrier.
And I'm Dennis Horvitz.
And today's topic, we're going to talk about the religious abuse of language. Now, as I said in the opening segment there are many people out there who like to say that they have a personal relationship, either with God or with Jesus. And of course, I claim that I have a personal relationship with Megan Fox.
I don't think your wife would be too happy about that.
Well, of course, I'm lying. You know.
Oh, that's the point, isn't it?
Well, here's the point. There's a fine line between subjectivity and delusion.
Yes,
okay?
yes, okay.
The fact that I think I would have a personal relationship with Megan Fox is clearly delusional. Okay? Their claim of having a relationship with God could be considered delusional, but it is, in fact, subjective. Okay? Now, why do I say these things? Because to me, and Dennis, what do you think? If I tell you I had a personal relationship with Stephen Hawking, okay, what would you infer from that comment?
Well, I would think that'd be more likely.
No, let's assume that I am telling you the truth.
Right.
Okay. What would you infer that with Stephen Hawking and I? Number one, obviously, I could call him and talk to him.
Right, and that
I could go visit him.
That you had actually met and established communication and talked about stuff.
That to me, that's a personal relationship.
That's a relationship, right?
You and I have a personal
Right.
relationship. Okay. What I don't understand is, how do you develop a personal... Well, let me put it to you this way. I would like to introduce you to someone, okay? This is someone I have a personal relationship with. However, there are some conditions to this personal relationship. Number one, this person is not alive or exists at this time. Number two, there is no photograph or image of this person. Number three, this person never wrote anything, never left a legacy of any sort. Okay? But what I would like you to do is to read this book filled with hearsay about this person.
And believe every word of it.
Believe every word of it, and then based on that criteria, can you have a personal relationship with unknown hearsay?
Yeah. So it's just a matter of one believing that one can have it.
That's right, which is the subjective part.
The
Then
subjective part.
Right. Then they jump into the delusional by claiming they do.
Right, right.
And then when you ask them to introduce you to that person, because obviously if I knew Stephen Hawking, wouldn't it be curious for you to ask me, Ron, there's a possibility, like maybe you bring me along, I'd like to meet him too?
I'd be bothering you. I'd be the bane of your existence.
There you go. That's the difference. But why? Because we know that there is such a person as Stephen Hawking.
Right.
Yes, you can visit him personally. You can shake his hand. There are pictures. There are movies. There are books. There is everything. You can hear him lecture on television.
And you wouldn't have to browbeat me about meeting Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, right.
You wouldn't have to be bending my ear every 2 seconds. Would you like to meet Stephen Hawking? Of course I would.
And I wouldn't condemn you or threaten you with anything if you refused to meet him.
Right.
I would just say, oh, okay.
Fine.
You don't have to meet him. He probably doesn't want to meet you either. So there you go. so the term personal relationship. Let me say something here. I have a small Webster's here, which I wrote personal. And here's what personal means: of or pertaining to a person, made or done in person, of or relating to the body or physical being, pertaining to an individual. So personal is it's very real. You can touch, you can meet,
Right.
you can speak.
Right.
My father, I had a relationship with my father. He died 15 years ago. I no longer have that
Right.
personal relationship with my father. Okay?
Right.
I remember what he said, but he also told me directly, so I don't have to go through anonymous people to pick up hearsay comments by my father.
And if somebody caught you talking to your father, they would immediately put you where you couldn't hurt yourself.
Well, yeah, my wife would say, is there something wrong?
Yeah.
Because obviously there's something else going on.
Right.
But that's what personal is, and then when you put it together with a relation is a natural or logical association between two or more things or people, a connection of person by blood or marriage, kinship, dealings or associations amongst persons or groups. In all of these definitions, this is very much in the present tense. That for you to have a relationship with somebody, it must be mutual. That relationship must come back to you. So if you and I have a relationship, Dennis, it's because I can call you and talk about things. You can call me and talk about things. We have a relationship. To go crawl in a corner and mumble syllables to myself with my eyes closed or looking at the stars, to me, that's not a relationship. That's meditating. Or as close to meditating as I would think somebody got. But the abuse of the term personal relationship, and the thing is, you hear politicians and pundits and all the people all the time say it on television, never questioned. Well, I happen to have a... one time I was on MSNBC. No, this was a CNBC. Mm-hmm. And I was on with the girl Vanity. Now, this girl Vanity...
I remember Vanity.
All right. She used to be a dancer for Prince.
Right. And
the artist from Minnesota.
She was in that whole crowd, right.
Very hot-looking babe.
Right.
Then she got into Pentecostalism.
Yeah, found Jesus.
She found Jesus. And I did an interview with her there. And, I mean, she was talking about, oh, I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and I speak in tongues. And I'm thinking to myself, what are we supposed to go, oh, that's wonderful, speaking in tongues. And is that the act of, like, fooling around and babbling? Because that's what that is.
You know,
am I supposed to commend some person because they babble to themselves?
See, you know what makes it really complicated is that there's just a whole lifetime and background of conditioning to where they're starting right off the bat by assuming that there's a supernatural something to begin with.
Right.
So then it's kind of, you have certain people that are more vulnerable than others, and then it's the slippery slope, that kind of thing.
Look at Bush during his first debates before his first election, George W. When the question to the panelists, or the candidates was, who was your favorite political philosopher?
Yes.
The other three candidates mentioned rational, real people who wrote real books.
Yep.
Bush goes, Jesus Christ, because he changed my heart. Now, if that was not an avoidance of the question, to me, his statement was begging for a follow-up. And not one reporter or pundit there had the cojones to say, oh, I see. And what did he write politically that influences your desire to become president?
Right. But I think that's probably more the failure of the interviewer than it was his.
Yes. They have no balls.
Because the problem with Bush is that he was a true believer. He is a true believer, and I think that I mean, it's hypocritical. The hypocrisy, I think, is maybe built into his belief, but I don't think he's a hypocrite about what he thinks he believes. I think that he really thinks he has a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and he uses these answers really to get out of, and you'll see that with every politician, is that they use religious terminology to really avoid the question. Because once they use religious terminology, the people in the audience invariably will either be silent or they will nod their heads in agreement.
Not to be too cynical, but the
Oh,
ones
I am, yeah.
the ones that use their religion to avoid questions scare me less than the ones who really
Well,
who are really that
use
delusional,
religion to answer a question?
or who really believe that what they're saying. I mean, that was the problem with Bush. I think George W. Bush is that he was a true believer. I mean, that was give me a good hypocrite any day.
Yeah. I mean, right, because at least you know the person's a hypocrite. It's like dealing with the devil you do know rather than the devil you don't.
Yeah, and at least I mean, in order to really be a true liar, you actually have to know what the truth is.
Yeah, right.
To have a grasp. That's that's the thing with Bush.
All right, here's another example, Dennis, of the abuse of language. Now, this was in the Daily News where they have the voice of the people, and people write letters to the editors, and sometimes they engage in a most of the time amusing repartee through the voice. And this person, Lenore McKinney, was responding to Joe Palmer. Now, she says to voicer Joe Palmer, "You most certainly will answer and give an account of your life here on earth. Do not compare Santa with God. Santa is a fantasy. God is very real." And then here comes the threat. They always start, and then they can't get away from the threats. And when he comes back for his people, you will indeed fall to your knees. I wish you a blessed day. First of all, God is real. Dictionary, the word real, not imaginary or pretended, actual, authentic, genuine, basic, serious, substantial, of or constituting fixed or stationary property as buildings. That would be realty. But the thing is, the top number one response, or the meaning of real, not imaginary or pretended.
You're on a tear today.
Now, this person that says that God is not imaginary or pretended, which means there has to be some sort of objective view of this.
Well, then Krishna Rama is real.
What?
Krishna Rama, or any of the gods of any other religions. Or you ask anybody in those religions, and they're going to tell you the same thing.
Right. So for this person, for God to be real, that's subjective. That's what I'll accept that. It's subjective to them. To them, they believe God is real. Right. However, to take that now and then use this subjectivity to threaten a person that you will indeed fall on your knees, now it becomes not only delusional, but irrationally aggressive.
A little vindictive?
Huh?
A little vindictive?
Very vindictive. Because you don't believe what I do,
then you deserve to be punished for it.
Right. You're going to get it, and my God is going to do it to you.
You refuse to reinforce my faith by agreeing with it, and you deserve to be punished for it.
In another letter by a concerned believer who wouldn't sign their letter that they sent to American Atheists, they put it here. Philippians chapter 2, verse 10 and 11. So at the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth. Well, that'll be a trick if you could do it while you're dead. And every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So you can bow, and then he adds as an editorial, you can bow to our Father now or later, but someday you will bow. Is that fascism? Is it oppression? Is there an innate oppression there or desire to force you to agree?
Yeah, I mean, they want you to be. They want to force you to. They expect you to be forced to
agree.
To agree.
Right.
Right.
So, and then
See,
and then they're going to say it's a religion of love.
Right. Well, and the thing is that it's the. I mean, it's so transparent. I guess if you're inside it, you can't see it, but if you're outside of it, it's so transparently obvious that while the people who claim to speak in the name of God, it's really all about them. That's what they're really talking about. You just, you won't.
Are they repeating rote? Have they put any thought behind what they're saying?
Well, I don't think it's. Well, but the thing is, I think that bottom line is, and I'm not saying there isn't religious wisdom and all that in various religions, but I think the bottom line is this: it's not about facts, it's not about evidence, it's not about logic, it's about emotion.
It's about emotion. But
And
what emotion would justify them to ultimately attempt to be bullies? Because this is bullying.
Yeah, it is bullying, but
it's threatening.
yeah, well, because the last couple of shows we did with AJ, and we were talking about it that these people resent the fact. There's something about, first of all, there's something about atheists. It's one thing, yeah, you have these fundamentalist Christians, for instance, or fundamentalist members of any other group, and yeah, they disagree with other religions, and they may think they're going to go to hell, but there's something about atheists that really pushes buttons in a way that competing faiths don't.
Because competing faiths still have that subjective element, whereas with atheists, we recognize a subjective element and will not accept subjectivity as objective reality.
Right. And what, no matter how, if you have for instance, if you have a monotheistic faith, you may disagree with someone else's interpretation of that, but at least to some degree, your faith is still being reinforced because the other person believes in the same God that you do.
Well, that's why at an interfaith conference, there will be Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, and no atheists.
No atheists, right. Well, but in a way that's...
So they'll accept any God, but they will not accept no God.
Yeah, I mean, there's just... They may make war against each other, and they hate each other, but there's just something about atheists and atheism that pushes their buttons in a way that the competing religions don't.
And I'll tell you what it is. We're living proof that they're wrong.
Yeah, I think that
we are living proof.
We're much more of a threat to their faith. I think we're a threat to their faith, whereas other religions are competition. It's a different kind of competition.
Yeah, it's still faith, but it's almost a complementary, competitive nature that they have.
Yeah, it's still within that. There's a certain amount of comfort zone, I suppose. Yeah. But
I guess they did that. You know what is? They can. I think what it is they can divest themselves of their dogma, and then relate on things like that they would call spiritual and transcendent, and they go into that language. Okay, let me give you an example. And this really bugs me. Recently, there was a show on television called Curiosity.
Oh yes.
Okay, and it was the first episode was, and I thought again the title of the first episode was erroneous. Did God create the universe? The question should have been, was the universe created by a God? To me, that would have been, because obviously Hawkins, who went on to explain, and even with some theories involved, that yes, the universe can be explained without a God. Now,
but they have to word things that way because they've got to sell toothpaste and washing machines.
Well, it's
and
not
cars,
it's not only that. It was so controversial, all right, that I guess you're right. They had to word it like that to First of all, to present the question of that is, first, a God did exist. Now, is he responsible for the universe?
I mean, there's a certain amount of soporific that has to be thrown to the audience right off the bat.
This was the only show I have ever seen of a scientific nature where, following the program, they had to have a half-hour special program moderated by Dave Gregory from Meet the Press to have 5 people representing the supernatural point of view against one cosmologist from Caltech in California.
Yeah.
All right? Paul Davies was one of them.
Oh, Paul Davies.
Okay. One was a theologian. They had another woman there on tape. They had a priest from the Vatican Observatory.
Yeah, Paul Davies is a believer, I believe.
They were all believers.
Yeah.
However, they take the position, and Paul Davies takes the position, that they actually believe in a God that is more esoteric, that does not involve himself in humans' everyday activities.
Closer to deism.
Right, which would be, to me, directly opposing what they probably go home and believe as their Bible.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well,
so they try to soft soap it. Did the host say anything about it? No. This poor Caltech scientist had to deal with 5. You know who the worst was? And you can see this. Go to the Curiosity Show and just Google the Curiosity Show. There's a clip with the Roman Catholic priest who's the head of the Vatican Observatory in Rome. Mm-hmm. This guy came off, well, I don't care if it was one universe, parallel universes, multiple universes, blah, blah, blah. God is behind it all, and that's it.
Yeah, well,
so much for the discussion.
Right, well, yeah.
You know? And then, of course, the Caltech guy, ex-Paul Davies, or maybe he did, maybe it was the other theologian, he says, do you think the universe would be any different if there was a God? If there wasn't a God? And the theologian said, yes, the universe wouldn't exist. Yeah. And that comment goes unchallenged. Back in '92, when I first heard Madeline Murray O'Hare speak at C-SPAN, one of the things she talked about is that whenever an atheist appeared on the news, they always had to have a religious person for balance.
Yes.
But when they have religious people on the show, they take the ball and run.
Right.
There is no balance.
Right.
Which indicates to me now that religious people are afraid, so they have to be there. Just like in the previous show, right, that they have to hire a bus to follow a bus that has a billboard they don't like.
It's like very needy and hysterical in some ways.
It's very
certainly hysterical. In the case of the bus, you know.
And it's very uncertain. I mean, if they are so uncertain, or if they are so worried about Stephen Hawking actually making sense on his program, that they have to get an additional half hour of time from NBC, I found that to be really quite embarrassing. And that second show should never have aired.
Yeah. But I mean, you can't.
And it was only Christians.
Yeah, right.
There was no other group represented.
But you can't, you know, I mean, you can't. The problem, yeah, I mean, it was just completely unnecessary, because what do you expect somebody, a theologian, to say other than, I don't care how many, whether there's one universe or a multiverse, God did it? I mean, that's the ultimate, that's the all-purpose answer. I mean, what else did what do they expect him to say?
So now here we have a case of religious language abusing itself so that it obfuscates the scientific message that is trying to be explained to the people by Professor Hawkins, in a very rational, calm way.
Right. Well, I mean, you're kind of back to square. You can't. So the thing is, you can't argue with somebody who says, "I don't care whether there's one universe or a multiverse. No, God did it." Well, you know, you can't argue with that, because they're not going to produce any evidence of it. I mean, that was the whole point of the show. You know, that was the conclusion of the show.
Yeah, it was a conclusion of the show that they still left it as, well, you didn't disprove God. You explained a lot of things, but God wasn't touched.
But
not even a mere flesh wound.
But the thing was, and I think that's where a lot of people miss the point about science in general, evolution specifically. they're kind of they're paranoid, and they assume that that's the purpose of science, is to disprove God. Science doesn't take God into account, period. It's not a matter of making an argument against God. It's just that you have scientific evidence for evolution, or how the universe began. It just, in and of itself, it kind of de facto flies in the face of supernatural claims.
You know, that's why sometimes I come to the conclusion, Dennis, that really debating God's existence, you're really playing into their hands. It doesn't matter. They're there to hear the theologian reinforce their own views, and they really don't care what an atheist says. And like you said, no one can disprove what has not been demonstrated to be proven. Right. So you can. So we're down to the last few seconds of the show. Dennis, I would like to thank you once again for joining me here.
I'm happy to do it.
All of you out there, American Atheists, please visit our website at AmericanAtheist.org. There you will see how you can network with other non-believers. There is nothing if you feel guilty about. No one is going to make your knee bend. No one is going to make you bow. No one is going to judge you. Believe me, we're all judged every day by everybody that we encounter. And they are the toughest judges in the world.
All those non-judgmental people who claim to leave judgment in the hands of God are judging like mad.
Oh, they're judging like mad, and I would prefer to just avoid them. But once again, AmericanAtheist.org. We have American Atheist Magazine. We have AA News. We have a lot of outreach. Don't be afraid to doubt. Don't be afraid to question, to really question those beliefs that you've had all along. You may surprise yourself.
And let us know how you feel about anything we've discussed as well.
You know, please, any questions?
Keep in touch.
Even atheists have questions, please. Send them to me. Send them to the Atheist Viewpoint. We'd love to answer and have a discussion with you. As far as the believers, look, if you can't write something rational, and if you can't write something where it is threatening or leaving voicemails without cursing, don't bother, because we really had enough of your morality, and we're kind of fed up with it. So, on behalf of David Silverman, Dennis Horvitz, our man behind the glass, Mr. Todd Jones, and me, Ron Barrier, and the Atheist Viewpoint, thank you. Until next week.